This was the first day that I'd got my new Performance Super Major home. Great excitement. Just unloaded it off a trailer with one brake stuck on, so one back wheel would hardly rotate. And I only recorded things on my phone, unfortunately. Didn't expect to be making a YouTube video about it. So this is it. And shortly when we get around the corner here, you'll see the water leaking down the block out of the cylinder head. There it is, a nice rusty streak. So the first job I did was take the head off, and I took it off outside by the look of it. I'd actually forgotten that. Here's the offending head and gasket. Why this one was carboned up more than the others, I don't know. The small hole in the gasket, big hole in the head, couldn't understand that. There's what I thought was damage in the gasket, turned out not to be. I must have pushed the tractor back in the garage to put the head back on. That's oil on the exhaust, so the engine was slobbering and water running down the block. And finally, an injector pipe with the end fell off. So the next step was to start dismantling it. Everything was very rusty. This is the inside of, or the underneath of a foot plate. And this is the brake coming up, which says no wonder the tractor would hardly move. That's a comparison of a Fordson and a Nuffield brake disc, which are very similar. That's the inside, obviously, of the brake housing. This is the rusty splines where they all fit on. And that is assorted rather, brake parts, all ready to be grit blasted. You can see the heat I had to have on it there to get the diff lock pedal out, which was seized solid. That's a part in the press being pressed out, as is that. And so lots of press work. So Roadworks compressor to the rescue, all ready to shot blast the rusty offending items. As you can see, I lay them on a pallet, put a tarpaulin underneath because I'm so tight I like to reuse most of the stuff if I can. There's all the bits blasted. There's another shot of them. They come up really quite nicely. This next one shows Enfo on the end of the diff lock cover, but it does reveal holes in rusty bits, unfortunately, that you didn't realise were there. But anyway, I've welded them all up afterwards. And then finally, I hang them all under the digger bucket like that, all ready to give them a couple of coats of paint. And in this last one, they're all sprayed blue. Easy on a video, isn't it? The hydraulic lever was seized solid in the tube that it goes through. The arms were seized on the end of the shaft. I tried to push it with that hydraulic pusher thing, and that didn't work either. The next step was to lift off the hydraulic top cover so I could get the trumpets off, the half shafts out, and replace the seals and bearings for the back wheel. When I let the weight off the jack, I couldn't believe how bad the bearing was. I'll just play that again in case you missed it the first time. Go.
Okay. Certainly a bit of play.
Believe it or not, that's oil in the bottom there. The lower hose looks like that. I squeezed the cogs off the end of the half shaft with that little hydraulic thing, and that I think was the best bearing of the lot. So one half shaft wasn't too bad at all. That was just a self-inflicted injury that I'd done with an angle grinder trying to cut the inner of the old bearing off. But that welded up okay, just ordinary MIG weld on there. And I was able to set it up in the lathe and machine it down again. And that all turned out looking quite nicely. The next one was a different story. That was really, really bad. And I had to weld that over and over, as you can see, and eventually machine that one down. That came out all right in the end, though. And finally down to 3 1/8, I think it is. And that works a treat. Pleased with the result in the end. This is how I get the old outer shell bearing out of the trumpet. Put it in the press, I welded up a bit to fit. The next picture shows how oval the left-hand side is, where the shaft had been running on it. And then I decided to take the whole casing off and took the diff out and then pushed it apart from the rest of the tractor with that ram, ready to have it blasted and painted. So it all looked quite tidy. So it was cleaned inside and out then. Cut some bits of plywood that then bolted onto the casing where the trumpets and brakes came from, so I could blast it without getting the inside of the casing full of grit. And while I was about it, I got some more bits and pieces that needed blasting as well. Did at the same time once the grit blaster was out. There's before and after with lift arms, a couple of drawbars and stuff like that. There they are afterwards. And then as if by magic, here's the casing all painted blue with the hydraulic top as well. Exactly the same thing with the trumpets, shot blasted and painted blue. I managed to free the hydraulic lever rod and then discovered there was a pin and a bush very badly worn on another part of the linkage. Whether you can see it, there's a flat on the pin and quite a big groove worn away. So I made another bush and welded up the pin, and this is what they look like when they're all back together on the linkage. One of the studs that held the seat on had snapped off. I managed to get some weld on the top of it and then eventually get it out with a pair of grips. The next bit was an absolute nightmare. The arms, I heated them red hot to get them off the shaft and thacked them with a sledgehammer. Even then, the shaft itself was stuck in the hydraulic top, which I had to put the whole thing in the press and put several tons on it to push it out. You can see how bad the shaft is, that black bit on the right-hand side, how badly corroded it was. It cleaned up reasonably in the lathe, and there's picture of the bushes and everything ready to reassemble it. Then it was just a matter of putting it all back together again. I made some gaskets for it to hold it together, hopefully with no oil leaks. And there's the casing, all lovely and clean, both inside and out. So I bet it's a long while since it's been like that. It's a finished gasket. And there it is, as if by magic, bolted back to the tractor. Next thing, of course, was putting in the diff and the brakes and then the trumpets. There's the new bearing and seal waiting to go back on the half shaft. I always struggle pushing it on because it often presses out the felt piece that I don't want it to. Putting this outer bearing into doddle after that. So it's coming along nicely in these pictures. Trumpets back on. And while it was in bits, I thought I might as well take the PTO piece out from underneath and put new oil seals in it. They can leak oil from one part of the gearbox to the back end transmission. So while I had it to bits, I thought I might as well do it. It's not too bad, just press the bearings out and stick a new seal in. Just making new gaskets for the oil suction bit and for the PTO shaft as well. The foot plates were held on with some sort of gutter bolts, I suppose they are, but they're A2 stainless from Screwfix, and they fitted and look a treat. They fit in the square in the holes, just the job. So nearly finished now. Soon be putting the wheels on. I need to be getting on a bit with this old tractor. It's been stood up since about last October, I suppose, where I haven't done anything to it at all. Prior to that, last summer, I'd done the back end, but it's never been put into work or tried anything with it since, and I did quite a bit to the hydraulics and one thing and another, and so it really needs to be just tried to see what works and what doesn't before I decide what to do about the engine and the rest of it. So first of all, where the top link goes, this bit here, that pin there is too small. There are no others, so I really ought to make 3 pins, so I can actually put a top link on it. Then we need to cut down some Alexander, which grows like wildfire near the coast here, and that will kill 2 birds with 1 stone, hopefully. So that's what I'm going to try. Just use this method of finding the centre of the bar to drill a hole in, just to make sure that bit is rocking and straight. I'll level across it, that's near enough for this. Well, that's all the pins made up. Let's see whether they fit now. Take this thin rusty one out and replace it with, it's all made to an inch, exactly an inch, so they should all go in. Yeah, that's one, and slightly longer one goes in the top. And this one goes where the top link goes. Just a matter of putting the linch pins in. And the final one. Lovely, that's finished. Right, so I'm going to put the grass cutter on and see if the whole thing will work. Put the PTO on, and we'll see if the hydraulics will lift it up and down. Is that on? Yeah, a bit greasy. Try out my new pins. It. Pressure on the top link to keep the grass cut from nosing into the ground, and we'll see if it'll lift up and down. Otto's enjoying it. Lifts it up anyway, that's a start. Let's see if we can cut some weeds down. that's the first time it's done anything since the back end's been put together. And I suppose the good news is the hydraulics work, the PTO works, the brakes work, and I'd be pleased with it really. But the worst bit is the engine rear oil seal leaks oil. It's actually dribbling out of there now. And of course the engine itself is very smoky. To say nothing of the steering wheel, which is absolutely diabolical to hold. It's enough to cut your hands. No gear lever knob, no high and low range lever knob either. So the thing is what to do next. Thanks for watching. Now I want the tractor to be reliable and usable. And so what would you do if it was yours? What would you do next? The options are take the wheels off and shot blast and paint them because they're very rusty inside the rims. Buy a new pair of mud guards, possibly a steering wheel. And then what about the engine? Would you soldier on with it at the moment, bearing in mind it does actually run okay, but it does dribble a little bit of oil and possibly might leak water out of the head gasket. Alternatively, I have got another engine which has got an FL head and is the same year as what the rest of the tractor is, which is in the shed. Would you pull that out and do it up properly? Lots of ifs and buts. So I'd like to know your comments. Thank you. So would Otto. Oh, well, thanks for watching. Go on then. Good boy. Sit. Good boy.